Hello and welcome to episode 66 of our Conversation to Connect. Let's Get Real, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi ONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. Our Conversation to Connect this week is with the inspiring and amazing Brenda Reiss, joining us from Redmond, Washington. Welcome, Brenda.
Hi, everyone.
So I am so excited that we're going to be rolling up our sleeves today and discussing the topic that you shared with our Exceptional Connections community at our event. Let's see, February. Where are we here? Time just goes by.
It
Our
does.
February 13th event, Forgive to Thrive. And we're going to be adding, you're going to be adding a little conversation about building resilience and embracing change as well. So
Yeah.
before we jump into this intriguing conversation, I want to take just a moment to introduce Brenda to our listeners and share her passion for helping people transform their lives through forgiveness. So Brenda Reiss is a forgiveness coach who guides you to discover where harboring resentments can be sabotaging your personal and business lives, limiting your ability to achieve your goals and dreams. Through simple processes, you can find peace and clarity and the ability to show up whole and empowered in all the areas of your lives. She's the host of the podcast, Forgive Yourself. Need to check it out. It's a place to turn your pain into peace, and the author of 2 books, Forgive Yourself and Journey to Your Heart Space, that you can find on Amazon. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. And
Well,
hi,
I'm
everyone.
so honored and thankful to have you here too. So before you jump into the topic at hand today, give our listeners a little bit more about, fill our listeners in about a little bit more about your journey.
Absolutely. Well, like most of us, we teach what we need to learn ourselves, especially when it comes to coaching. And so obviously I needed forgiveness because, the universe kind of led me toward this forgiveness process. And the way that I was working really hard in life, and what I realized was I was forgiving too easily. I wasn't allowing myself to feel the feelings, to be able to process what was happening, because there's a lot that happened to me, is what I looked at. Today I look at it as for me. And after my third divorce, it really hit me hard. And because in that 11-year marriage, there was a lot of abuse, neglect, and I almost went to prison, as I shared, because of being so codependent. And so I had a lot of learning to do. And luckily, I got kind of woken up and my body started to break down, which is a really good message for me. I don't know about how many of you, have different ailments that show up because, our body does keep the score. And so it was a beautiful thing to find out that there is a process to forgiveness because I was trying to do it on my own and it wasn't working. I was letting time happen and I was just being triggered right and left. And it was learning these beliefs and patterns that I had learned younger in life that really helped me to be able to come into my own and being able to stand in my power today and be able to help other women and men do the same thing.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I love what you say, our body does keep the score, and it really does. And so, that's a beautiful way to look at it. And instead of what is my body doing to me, it's like, what is my body saying to me?
Yes,
The prompting to be able to really dig deep and find out what's going on.
absolutely.
So Brenda, what is the ABLE framework that you talked about at our recent event? Share with our
So
listeners an overview of that.
absolutely. So the overview of what we talked about was a way to look at forgiveness a little bit differently. That's my mission. My mission is to help people to look at forgiveness differently. So instead of looking at it as I have to say I'm sorry or I have to release these resentments, that's part of it. But instead of looking at it as a lot of people have been hurt and wounded and they've been victimized. And so, but instead of holding on to that energy and that story, how can I turn it around and use it, what I say, for good? How can I take this information and help me move forward? I look at forgiveness as what is getting in my way of being more of who I am. So the ABLE framework tells us that we're able to do this. The A stands for a path to unity. Thank you, Cyndi.
I'm just
Yeah.
showing the worksheet for those of you who were there, and those who weren't, you could be taking notes simply by just putting ABLE, and then she'll define it.
Yeah, the ABLE framework. So this is keeping the end in mind. So that being, I mean, a path to unity is keeping the end in mind. So really what we all want and what we're moving towards is that we all work together. Because what happens is when we feel like we have resentment or we feel hurt or wounded, we feel separate and alone. And we don't want that. So how can we come together? Because what my saying is when we forgive ourselves, we create a forgiving world. Because everything we do ripples out to everyone around us. And if you listen to David Hawkins at all, he's got a book called Power versus Force. He's got a scale of consciousness in there that tells us that our energy actually affects 250 people around us. So that being the case, after studies and studies, he's got lots of YouTubes and information. But when I was doing the training for the forgiveness, that really got me. It's like, oh, so that means positive and not so positive. But if I affect 250 people and you all do, look at that. Isn't that amazing? So that's what creates this ripple effect of peace, this ripple effect of understanding ourselves. So the path to unity is supporting ourselves and create a bigger environment so that we can live the life that we all want to live instead of living in our pain and in our past. So that's the A. And then the building of resilience is really important to know. So people are like, what? How does forgiveness build resilience? Forgiveness builds resilience by being able to, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on today, but building resilience is a way for us to understand what's going on inside of us, because the only reason that I don't feel resilient is because have self-doubt. I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like there's something wrong with me. And so I constantly keep getting triggered all the time instead of gaining ground. So building resilience is when we notice what these beliefs and patterns are inside of us. And there's a way to do that we'll talk about. When I can build resilience to weather any storm, that makes me stronger. And then again, it ripples out to everybody around me that helps them be stronger. So forgiveness can actually build resilience by knowing ourselves better, understanding our beliefs and patterns. And then the L in the ABLE framework is letting go of resentment. Because, we all got them. We all got them. We're human. And no matter how much work we do, somebody's going to get under our skin a little bit. So when we can learn to let go of resentment by understanding what the root of that is and what part I play in it, and then being able to move forward, it relieves us of the burden of self. And then there's the E is embracing change. And that's where we can redefine our stories. So the embracing change is learning to be willing is what I tell my clients, to look at your story, because we have those two. We have something that we're holding on to, and we're getting a benefit from it, whether it keeps us small or whether it keeps us from moving forward, whether it keeps us stuck. There's a benefit in there somewhere. And so when we can redefine our stories, that's what I term as embracing change. When we redefine our stories, that's powerful, because now I'm bringing the power back to me instead of giving it away by being resentful, by hanging on to the story and giving this person or people or situation all my power instead of bringing it back to me, which I need it for myself. So that is the ABLE framework that I have developed to help kind of help us understand forgiveness in a bigger way.
Right. Wow, that's beautiful. I love the positive visual of the ripple effect that we can be on this earth and,
Yeah.
really make a difference and not have the negativity and animosity of unforgiveness, spew out, but be a force for good.
A force for good.
So I love to hear you talking about the fact that we can redefine our stories and be able to minimize the pain we were experiencing. So, Brenda, what's a good way to start on this journey?
So the way that I start is, of course, we have to know our story. So we all have something. I have something that I know bothers me or continually comes at me, a certain person or situation or a feeling of whether it's self-doubt or whether I'm not good enough. If we own our own business, sometimes it's like not getting out there, not being able to be on video very much, right? Excuse me. And so we have a story. And usually it's something happened to me, like for me. And it was like, because how we do anything is how we do everything. So if I'm holding a resentment against like the ex, it's going to affect me in my business or my job because I'm sorry, but we're just not able to separate that. We're not that good. We think we compartmentalize, but we really don't. But when we can redefine our stories, what I call is shifting our perception around them, and we can see the situations happening for us rather than to us, we can minimize that pain. So again, like I talked in the talk, I'm not saying that something wrong didn't happen because that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is saying, yes, I know something wrong happened or something not good happened, but I'm not going to let it take me down and keep me down forever. It's not that we weren't victimized. It's the fact of what am I going to now do? How am I going to let it define me moving forward? So what we want to do is become aware of this story. So we all have someone that we're irritated at or someone that we know has hurt us, whether it's parents, whether it's a spouse, whether it's an ex-spouse, girlfriend, coworker, colleague, friend. So what we want to do is be able to write down that story. We write down that story. And we write it down as a victim. This happened to me. We do this first because the most valuable thing we can give ourselves, and this is what coaching does, the most valuable thing I do is I witness your story. I witness and validate your story because there's a part of us that really needs that. And they even have universities about this. There's classes in universities about being able to witness stories. I think it's in Arizona, there is a place for veterans to go and tell their story. And they are finding that the healing that these veterans are getting through just having their stories witnessed and validated is helping them through the trauma. And so we need to give that to ourselves, having someone that can witness our story. So we start off that way because we can't redefine something that we don't know is there. So then we take a look at it and we go, oh, okay, so I'm telling my story. And now, what part of it am I ready to redefine? Am I tired of my story yet? Because some of us aren't, and some of us are. I don't know about you, but I was sick and tired and hearing myself over and over again, and I even had a therapist tell me, just stop, Brenda. We are no longer talking about your ex-husband. Either you're going to get over it, you're going to let it go, right? Or I'm not going to be able to talk with you anymore, and we're not going to be able to move forward. So if you're ready to just talk about you and heal you, then let's do this. And it was a wake-up call for me, right? Because I was stuck in my story. So having somebody go, okay, are you ready to redefine? What part of this are you ready to redefine? And that's how we start. Then you write down, well, okay, this colleague took my idea and ran with it, so I feel betrayed. Okay, we'll take that example. All right, so out of that, what am I ready to redefine? The fact is, the colleague took the idea and ran with it. But the story I'm making up about it is that, that they did this to me, that I'm going to fail now, and that they're going to be so much better than I am. And they're making this money off this idea. And I didn't. I'm holding on to the victimhood. Does that make sense? So what part of that am I ready to let go of? And the difference of this is, what's the fact and what's the thing that I'm making up about it? What am I making it mean about me? If it's betrayal in any sort, because we all have a pattern of betrayal, all of us do, somewhere. And so if we have a pattern of betrayal, where have I been betrayed? How much energy do I still want to give this person? And how much do I want to pull back and go, I think I'm done with that story. I think I'm done with giving them that. I am going to now take a couple steps for me. What are those steps? How can I change this for me? And sometimes it's just going, okay, I need some new mantras. I need to talk to somebody out loud about this. I need to get some ideas from someone. But a lot of times we just journal on it. If we journal on it, we'll get some answers. How do I want to redefine this story? Because sometimes it's not good to be in relationship with these people. Sometimes it's not healthy for us to be. But sometimes we do want a relationship with that person. But to be able to reconcile with someone, we have to understand what is our needs and desires, what is their needs and desires. Can we talk about it? Can we meet or not? I know that's a lot. But this is really important. It's like, what is it? What am I making this mean about me? What am I ready to redefine? What part of this story? What's one or two small steps I can take? And if it involves someone else, do I want to reconcile with them or not? Because the forgiveness process, you don't have to be in relationship with somebody to forgive.
Wow, that's beautiful. So it reminds me of the networking, the networking nugget that you gave at our networking event. You talked about forgiveness strengthens emotional resilience and the ability to cope with adversity. That's such a beautiful word picture there of strength and then you give I love the way you give different things to like look out for, like, what's the fact? And
Yeah.
can we come to a place where we can work together and understand each other's, where we're coming from? Or do we have to just completely, turn the page and move on and not have that person in our life? So tell us a little bit more about emotional resilience and, how is that, in what way is that using life as a mirror?
Yeah. So what we talked about was using life as a mirror. This is a big tool that I use in the forgiveness process. And the way that we build emotional resilience and adversity and being able to cope with adversity is to know what it is that's bothering me. And a great way to know what is bothering me inside of me is taking a look at what these beliefs and patterns are. Because the one thing that we talked about was that what we get to understand is it is our beliefs and patterns that keep us stuck and unable to move forward. And I don't think a lot of people talk about this enough because we don't realize how big and small hurts that aren't acknowledged. And then I use the word integrated. If they're not integrated, then they become bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they turn into those resentments. All right. And this brings the guilt. This brings the shame. And it becomes heavier in our bodies. And the other thing is that so we can't just think our way through. We're feeling creatures, but we weren't taught to feel. I mean, how many of you can actually say, I can feel my feelings, I can name my feelings, I allow my feelings, and they're all good, right? Not when I ask that question, people are like, oh, well, huh, if you put it that way, maybe not. Because we can cry at commercials, we can do that things, but do I really allow myself to feel the shame, the guilt, the hurt, the pain, the betrayal, the sadness? Do I allow that? No. So we weren't taught to love and accept ourselves. But that's what we can do in this process. And the way that we learn to accept ourselves and strengthen this emotional resiliency is using the mirror. And so what I like to do is what we did was a little exercise, because what I look at is I don't know sometimes what my beliefs and patterns are. It's hidden. Some of them I know, but some of them I don't. So how am I going to find those ones that I don't know about? Well, I'm going to look at my relationships as a mirror. So my belief is that all relationships are for growth and healing. And that being the case, I get to look at these relationships for the good and the not so good. So this mirror is a reflection of those hidden beliefs and patterns. It allows me to see what's going on inside of me through that outer reflection. It allows me to know my triggers better. It gives me a way, then now I can diffuse the trigger because I know that it's there and actually clear it. And that's what provides the resiliency. Because if I'm not being triggered all the time by these people, right, I can become pretty resilient and I can go, okay, that happened. I'm not going to take it personally. So, because the more that we can create this inner resilience, the better chance we have of creating a better impact around us. So, we'll take this, and what I talked about was an exercise where we took a minute and we wrote down some 3 to 5 things about someone that irritates us. So if you think about someone, now maybe you guys don't have anyone to irritate you. I still do. But if you take anyone that irritates you, take a few seconds now, write down what it is that irritates you about them. And it's not a time to be all nice and kind. It's a time to go, what really irritates me? Because you don't want to give it much thought. You just write down a couple things. And then once we have a couple of these things, we're going to stop and we're going to go, where does that happen in my life? For me. We're looking in a mirror, not to beat ourselves up, right? Because this is going back to that awareness piece that I talked about. We are just creating awareness. So the idea is if you wrote down somebody that said they're mean to me, or they don't listen. Okay, where am I mean to myself? Where am I not listening to myself? Because remember, this mirror is for us to find what's denied, repressed, and rejected, what we've denied, repressed, and rejected about ourselves. I'm trying to find the golden nuggets within me so that I can transform them. So if they're not listening, okay, where am I not listening? And and it can be that I'm not listening to other people either, because we have those people too, right? We have those people that we're not listening to, right? So what else comes up, right? Maybe they're selfish. This is an example I used in the talk. Well, maybe where are you not being selfish enough? See, it can be looked at a couple different ways. Where am I not listening to myself? But wait a minute, if they're selfish, maybe they're showing me where I'm not selfish enough. Maybe I'm giving too much away. Because selfish isn't a bad thing. It's got a bad rap, but we have to be lovingly selfish. We've got to take care of ourselves first. My body was breaking down. I mean, I was in adrenal fatigue, I needed a back fusion, neck fusion, and I got a brain tumor. My body was trying to get my attention. I was not being selfish enough. I was trying to prove myself to the world so much that I was giving away, giving away, giving away, and I think we do that. And
Can we,
not stopping and taking care of myself.
so can we also say, substitute selfish for like boundaries? We're
Yes.
having good boundaries for ourselves, right? And so we're reframing things a little bit as well, is what I'm hearing you say.
We are reframing things, and having inner and outer boundaries is really valuable, because the inner boundaries is for me, the outer boundaries is for someone else.
Right.
And being able to stop and go, what do I need right now? This is the number one question. Who asks that? Who stops? And now, if we're doing personal development, we probably do. But how many of us stop and go, what do I need right now?
I- You
We
know,
don't.
I just had an epiphany here because I'm having a little conversation in my head with somebody saying you're selfish. And it's like the response, if you're, grounded and been working on things is, you know, thank you. It's taken me a long time to get these good boundaries, you
Yes,
know? So again,
absolutely.
you're reframing it. And so,
Absolutely.
or you could take it as, oh, I'm selfish. Oh no. Or, I'm selfish, really? So there's just different ways that we can receive that information, but it really depends on the filter, is
Yes.
what I'm hearing you say, the mirror that we're looking at and how we interpret that.
Yeah, because I'm only going to take it personally if it resonates inside me. If I'm feeling that about myself, if somebody says you are really selfish, and if I feel like I'm being meanly selfish, like I am a selfish person, I'm going to take it to mean that that's not good. And I'm going to get upset, and I'm going to go into defending myself. Whenever someone defends themselves, you know you've hit a trigger. Because
Mm,
otherwise, if I didn't have it, if I know, if I'm grounded, like you said, Cyndi, and somebody says you're selfish, and I can just like, thank you. I am. It's taking me 60 years to get here.
right.
You know what I mean? And then we can kind of laugh, and that's when you know, right? But if somebody says you're mean, and if I feel mean, like if I've been mean to myself and I'm just, because really it comes from the inside. If I don't have anything for it to resonate with, it's going to bounce right off. And the same thing is for kindness. The same thing is for great compliments. How many of us have trouble with compliments? It's like, you look really great today. Or, Brenda, that was such a great talk. You know, oh, thanks. I could do that. Or I can go, thank you. I appreciate that. What resonated with you? But how many of us kind of shrink and go, oh, this old thing, when we get a compliment, or it's
Right.
like, oh, I got this at the thrift store. It's like we do these things, and it's like, why do I do that? So it can't resonate with us unless we have it within us. And that's why the mirror is so valuable, is because it lets me know what's going on inside me that maybe my conscious mind isn't aware of. Now that I know this, I have something to work with. Now I can take a couple steps and I can change that.
Yes, that's really beautiful. So the mirror, aka awareness, aka being grounded, the journey, it's all part of the process.
Yeah.
So we don't think of forgiveness as being a solution, to what's getting in the way of us moving forward. So a lot of times people don't realize they compartmentalize if they have a grievance against somebody, right? They
Yeah.
don't think it'll affect other areas of their life. So how can we look at forgiveness differently and really take it on as something to help, like you said earlier, it's way we do everything is the way we do anything. Is that what it is?
Yeah. How we do anything is how we do everything.
Oh my gosh. Years ago, I heard that and it like
Mhm.
was a life changer for me. And I've always used that as my barometer.
Yeah.
So how can we look at forgiveness differently to be able to help us to have that awareness to get to the next level, to clean things up, to move our life forward, to being able to be a positive ripple effect to others.
So what I encourage everyone to do, and I'm doing it with you, right, all the time, and that is creating that awareness. So how can I look at forgiveness differently? Is that I look at forgiveness as all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. And the reason why I do that is because we are here on earth to be able to learn to love ourselves, to grow into ourselves and grow into love more deeply. That's my feeling. That's my thought. That's my belief. If that's the case, then I am constantly looking at, we're not here for no reason. So I'm constantly looking at life as showing me something. And so if that's the case, then that means that, when somebody does something, I'm going to say to me, I get to go, ooh, that's resonating within me. What can I do about that for myself? Because I have no control over other people, right? I can't control anything but me. And so it's just being reminded of that. And being reminded that the way that I do it now is like in the beginning, I got super irritated, to be honest. It's like, you want me to look in my training? No, they did that to me, right? They did it to me. They've got the problem. And it's like I use the example in the talk about I have a pattern of picking emotionally unavailable men. Okay. A lot of us can relate to this. And in this process of the mirror, what I learned was I was the one emotionally unavailable. So I was getting this mirror all the time. Now, it doesn't mean that they didn't have their own issues or they weren't emotionally unavailable. But there we go. The other thing was anger. My ex was so angry. I mean, blatantly angry. And I did everything I can to keep everything calm and do that because I wasn't an angry person until I got divorced. And then I went into a raging, angry blackout and ripped a desk apart, not knowing that I was holding so much anger inside. Right? So then I look and went, oh, that's what you mean. Life is a mirror. That's what you mean. So there's these things inside of us that we're holding that these mirrors are showing us. So the way that we can really learn how to look at forgiveness differently is, oh, maybe I can switch how I define forgiveness. And maybe it's not just about saying I'm sorry, maybe, and letting somebody off the hook. Maybe I can look at forgiveness as trying to find what's in my path that's keeping me from being everything that I'm meant to be. If I did that, how would that change how I respond versus react to life? Because when I'm hurting, I'm in pain, I'm defending myself, I am reacting. I'm like an animal in a corner, my claws are out, and I don't mess with me, right? Whereas if I'm softened and I'm going, ooh, where's the gift? What can I learn from this? Now, it doesn't mean that we give everybody a pass because we have to learn boundaries and some people aren't healthy for us, right? And there's some circumstances where some relationships we don't need to be in. So there's defining all that. But maybe if I can take a different look at forgiveness and look at it more from this point of view, mine, what if that could be the ticket to where I go, oh, let me redefine forgiveness as what is in my way? What is the pattern beliefs, the things that are blocking me from being everything I know I can be? Everything I'm meant to be. And that's how I want people to look at forgiveness. If they would like to.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a lot, and that's like a big change for a lot of people. And I've been doing this for a while, so this is cultivated and integrated for me. And so I'm very open to hearing other people's thoughts and feelings about that. How to look at forgiveness differently.
Brenda, what do you find is the most, I mean, you've touched on it, you've beautifully woven it through your talk here, but I'm just curious, what you feel is like the most difficult thing about forgiveness. Why is it such a hurdle? Why do people want to forgive, but they don't know how to, or they have the awareness, but they don't have the tools, or they have a blind spot? What is it about forgiveness that is so difficult?
Yeah, the two top things that people say when they looked at all the studies and what I find when I ask people is I don't know how.
Hmm.
And then the second thing is that I don't know how to forget. And that's a misnomer because we never forget. We have got a video recorder up here in our head that records every single thing, every breath we take, everything. There's no way we're going to forget. And there's no way that we want to forget because, if I am like this emotionally unavailable man, or if I'm in an abusive, if I've got a pattern of abuse, I want to be able to learn from that process and go, oh, here's a flag, here's a flag, here's a flag, right? So I don't want to go there again. So there's a reason we can take these things and learn from them. So we don't want to forget. But what we sure want to do is we want to take and we want to separate, we want to take the sting out of it. And an example that I used is this: we want to separate the bee from the sting. When we can do that, it's like, here's what happened. But I don't have to let it, I can take care of the sting. I can heal the wound. And so that way, the incident stays there. It'll be in my memory, but it won't hurt me. I don't have to hold on to that, the past and the pain and ruminate on it over and over again. And that's what I loved about this radical forgiveness process because it gave me steps. I didn't know what to do. I was trying to do it the way that I was taught growing up and, let bygones be bygones and give people a break and have empathy for them and all of this. But I was hurting inside because I was attached to my story. They didn't tell me that part. So the 5-step process that I teach takes the guesswork out of forgiveness. For me, it changed how I looked at it and it changes how my clients look at it. And so it gives you a process of how to, because other than that, some people can go through and they can forgive, like we read about or we see in the news or there's books written where people can empathize and do that, but the majority of us, no. And then when we can't forgive, there's shame because we should be able to do that because that woman forgave that guy, that did this or this. So we want to just take a step back and go, you know what? It's okay. And I'm going to take these steps and I'm going to learn how to forgive. And it's
Mm,
brilliant.
it is beautiful. Well, thank you for that. So before we open for Q&A, so be thinking of any questions or clarification that you have, ahas, insights regarding what Brenda shared either Tuesday or today. Feel free to share that. But I want to just, as an avid gardener, I read a post that Brenda shared and I responded to her and I said, "Oh, I love this," because it was a gardening analogy that really talked about this forgiveness process. So can you share that with us? Because I thought it was just so brilliant and so beautiful
Absolutely.
and it resonated with me and I hope it resonates with our listeners.
Absolutely. And I'll read it to you. Forgiveness is like taking care of a garden. Those who nurture it see it flourish, while those who don't let it wither. Just as a well-tended garden grows beautifully, forgiveness helps relationships thrive. But holding on to grudges is like letting weeds take over, blocking growth and stifling happiness.
It's such a beautiful image and it just makes it so tangible. And it also makes me like, why would you not want to forgive if you have the option of instead of having sowing seeds of weeds, growing a beautiful garden that people
Yeah.
can enjoy, and pollinators and all of that kind of stuff, and be a contribution, the ripple effect that you talked about in a positive
Mhm.
way, right? Instead of having dandelions that you're
Yes.
blowing these weeds, I mean, dandelions are good for you. So don't take this example too literally here, but just the idea of you're blowing weed seeds
Yeah.
versus you're planting a garden, whether it be a flower garden or a vegetable garden. So thank you for that. That's so beautiful.
Well, and it's a well-tended garden, right? So in there is nurturing, nourishing, and well-tended.
Yes.
How many of us put ourselves on the back burner and we don't nourish or well-tend our garden? There's
Yeah.
some people that do, but I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it, even though I know this stuff and I teach this. I'm, I'm guilty of it too. So that's why that comment, when you think of spraying and gardens, is like those of it, like Cyndi, like you're a beautiful example where you well tend your garden, you love your garden, you nourish that. Well, just think of that as yourself, because the number one thing that people really want is self-forgiveness. They feel bad for something they've done or something they didn't do, or they feel bad for who they think they are because of that. And so when we can nourish, nurture, and well tend our hearts, then that is a really good beginning for forgiveness of self.
I also think of it as, it's our relationship garden, right?
Yeah.
And our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our family, our relationship with our neighbors, with others.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and it's okay. We resonate with the people, the people that resonate with us come near.
Yes.
And that's just the way it is. So there's so many beautiful analogies with the garden and with building stronger relationships and more harmonious relationships, as you mentioned. So I want to make sure we allow time, because this is such a beautiful topic, and I think it's worthy of conversation as well as the beautiful insights that you laid out. So feel free to unmute yourself and be able to share again your question, your epiphany, your aha. I see that Marley's unmuted yourself, so go for it, Marley. What do you want to share?
Oh, I have a question, Brenda, and let's see. Oh, I had some notes here. I found it really interesting that in this whole process of forgiveness, that we do affect, influence, have impact upon 250 people.
Yeah.
And I had never, I thought of it probably more in networking ways than in that personal way. But as I mentioned to you, as I've written this book and getting it out, and I've encountered so many women who are being denied access to grandchildren because there's issues between mother and child, mother and daughter-in-law, mother and son, whatever it is. And it occurs to me, or maybe you know this, if a mother can forgive herself, because obviously you don't make it through motherhood without making a lot of blunders.
Right.
There's really no manual, and every child is different. And if that parent can forgive herself, does that, even though the wall has not come down and there's still separation between her, can there be a spiritual impact that crosses over that wall and begins to influence, affect that child? I guess this is a real spiritual kind of
Oh,
question.
it's beautiful. Thank you, Marley. Yes. So the reason why I love radical forgiveness so much is because it's a spiritual program. It's not just about the physical. It's not just about humanness. It's understanding that we are energetic beings. When I do the work with somebody, with the forgiveness work, remember, it's always about self-forgiveness. We're starting looking outside of ourselves, right? To see what's going on inside of us. When I heal this inside of me, then what it does is it ripples out, and it can change the relationship with the person that you're doing the work on. Now, they, of course, have their own stuff going on. But the difference is this: when we heal ourselves as a mother, right? We have the mother guilt, mother shame,
Yeah.
and when we do that, when we heal this part and we know we've done the best we can, and we get to this point of not just knowing it, but feeling it, then we can detach from our children, give them the space that they need by letting them know and not giving them that pushing energy. Like, why can't you forgive me? And why don't you do this? And like a lot of moms do, they text them when the kid said, please don't. And it's honoring and being in acceptance. I can't be in acceptance of somebody else's desires and wishes if I'm hurting and I'm wanting something from them. And as a mother, of course, we do. We want that love, and we want to know we did a good job, and we want to know they're okay. But sometimes we can only do our own work, and then that does ripple out. I have seen so many relationships be healed by the person doing their own work. And I've also seen where it wasn't good for them, right, to be together. The other person decided not to, or they decided not to. But there was a disillusion in a favorable manner, right? Because then they're knowing, okay, I have done that. I had one mother in the Q&A that I did. I had one mother say that. She says, I've forgiven myself. I've made amends, for what I feel that what she could do, but her daughter still would not want to talk to her. She doesn't know why. And I think that's what gets us the most. We don't know why, but that's life. Sometimes we don't have the answers. And so how can I learn to be in acceptance of that person's journey and just go ahead and live my life? So that's where we do our healing, and we learn to love ourselves, and we make amends. We do what we can do, but then we work on our own guilt and our own shame, which will ripple out to our children and other people that we're estranged from. And then eventually there's a possibility that they may reach out. But that's what I had to do with my oldest daughter. I shared with you after the meeting, I had to do that with my oldest daughter. And I had to detach, and I had to just do my work. And then it took several years, and she finally reached out. And it was like, hey, Mom, like nothing ever happened. Hey, Mom, just saying hi. It's like, cool, this is good. And then I just met her where she's at. Hi, I hope you're well. And I let her come to me.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. This gives me this gives me something to work with as I meet these women.
Yes. Yeah.
And to offer them hope, because I have a feeling what they're feeling is, I'm helpless.
Right.
This person won't, have relationship with me, so I'm totally helpless.
Yeah.
But what you're saying, they're not helpless.
They're not.
Yeah.
No. And the best thing we can do, the cure for helplessness, is action. It's action. So what can I do? If I'm sitting there in like the ethers going, it's all up to this other person. No. It's not up to them. They have their own stuff. But let me take action that I can be in control of. Take action for me. Let me see where I'm being triggered. What is it that her abandonment or his rejection or her rejection, what is it stimulating in me? That's the key. Where does this go? What does this remind me of? What does this feel like? Oh, that's my mom and dad. Or that's my teacher. Or that's my brother or sister or whatever. Like, oh, I can go way back there. that's when you know, oh, I can work on that.
Mhm.
But what, where else is this affected? Because she's not being triggered for no reason. There's something to heal.
Thank you.
It's beautiful work, Marley. Beautiful work that you're doing, helping these women and your book. Oh my God.
Thank you.
Thank-
I received that.
Good. Yay.
That was a beautiful insight, Marley. And I know that you're making a big difference. And that's part of the ripple effect here, that just having this conversation and being able to each do our own part, whether it's personally or just the awareness for our own family, does make a difference.
Yeah.
So any other insights or questions, feel free to unmute yourself. This is a wonderful opportunity. Teresa.
Brenda, I didn't have a question, but I think that it makes so much sense when you're mirroring, right? Because this is when you're learning where the triggers originated, right?
Yes.
And you're thinking about, like, for me, it's like, oh, I forgot about that when I was 5 years old. You go back and you're thinking about all these things, and then that just brings self-awareness, right? And
Mhm.
then you can take care of your own needs. You learn to take care of your own needs. And then you reach that self-acceptance, right? And so I think I mean, it's so important to realize that you're not condoning what somebody did to you, right? What you're doing is you're learning to forgive yourself and take care of yourself, you know, which a lot of us women, we weren't taught, like you said, we weren't taught to do that, right? We were taught to just be the good little girls and
Yeah.
take care of everybody else, right? So,
Right.
but yeah, it's just, it just creates so much self-discovery, right? And going forward, it does I guess it's the forgiveness. It's just the forgiveness that you give yourself. And so, yeah, I think it's great. It's great. Good work. Thank you.
You, Teresa.
Mhm.
One
I-
of the things,
I just have to jump in with a comment right now. There's a rainbow out my window.
Oh, beautiful.
I think
Perfect.
that's significant for what we have talked about.
Yes, very. Thank
It's the
you.
universe talking to us, right?
Yeah. Miss Gail.
yes, one of the things I was thinking about as you guys were talking here just recently is that I guess go back, I believe forgiveness is a choice. It's
Yes.
something we choose to do, but it's
Absolutely.
also something that we might need to choose to do over and over again, because it's kind of like an onion. An onion has many, many layers, and we may think that we've forgiven totally, whether it's ourselves or another person.
Right.
But I think what you talked about with the triggers, what are we looking at? That we can look at that and say, okay, is this something that I need to go back again and say, you know what, I choose to forgive here? And I guess the other thing I thought about is, as going through and taking notes on this, is that I'm a Christian. So for me, I have to look at forgiveness, that God has forgiven me so much. So I need to be able to forgive others as he's forgiven me. And for me, that's, just being able to say, okay, since I've been forgiven, then I can forgive and I choose to forgive.
Yes. Yes, beautiful. Thank you for that. When I give my talks and I talk about what forgiveness is and isn't, the Stanford Forgiveness Project, that's one of the things in there. It's two things that really stood out for me in the beginning. One, forgiveness is a choice, and forgiveness is a trainable skill,
Mhm.
which means we're not born with it. It's a skill we can learn. So thank you for bringing that up, because there is layers, Gail. You are so right, because, like I was thinking that I had, the mother wound, as is so prevalent. I was doing this forgiveness work and I think, I got this. And then boom, something happened. And it was like, oh my God, that's my mother. Oh no, you know?
I also liked your part about changing the story.
Yeah.
Because, and the mother thing, because sometimes when you go through and you look back on those things how you parented, you may say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had done something different. But if you can change that story to, I did the best that I could with the information I had at the time, and whatever the situation is, I did the best I could with the information I had at the time, unless you're just being stupid. I mean,
Right.
we all have
There's
our
that.
stupid moments where we have to forgive ourselves.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's, I did the best I could with what I had at the time. And now I've grown and I've known that maybe there was another way I could have handled that. But in the same way, need to look at, okay, if I handled it the way that I did, then that other person is going to grow through some things too.
Right.
So it really, I think, changing that story and not looking at the story like I'm bad, but I did the best I could, and now I'm growing, and now I can, do things differently. I can
Oh,
respond differently to situations.
oh, I love that. And it's so true. And it
Mm.
doesn't mean that we don't have amends to make either. Because even though I did the best that I could with what I had, right? What you're saying here is I can say, I am sorry. This is what happened. I'm sorry for the hurt that I caused and
Yep.
that I have grown. I am, and how can I make this up to you?
Yes.
For those relationships that are healthy and that you want to nurture.
Yes.
So yeah, beautiful.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Speaking of parenting, I heard someone recently say that they were having this conversation with God. And he said, I was a parent. And even my children made decisions that were against me. So cut yourself some slack.
I love it.
That's beautiful.
Oh, that's great.
That's really beautiful, Marley. Before we close here, Brenda, you talked about how we don't always need to apologize. So sometimes people feel like there's this knee jerk that you need to apologize.
Yeah.
And I've heard the word used just, in conversation here, and you've used it as amends, make amends. And that feels so much. Tell us about the difference between you want to take personal responsibility for your actions, your choices, things that affect others. I
Right.
believe in that. I think that's so important. That's my part, is to take responsibility. But talk to us about how you frame that, what is a way that is honoring you, but at the same time taking responsibility for situations and
Well, so
making amends.
thank you for this, because the difference is, you say I'm sorry when you have done something worth apologizing for. When I've hurt you intentionally, when I've done something intentionally, I can say, I'm sorry, I did this. But how many of you hear, I'm sorry in the grocery store? I'm sorry when they walk by you, or I'm sorry when somebody says something, or even in a meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to say, right? There's nothing worth apologizing for there. That's more in a grocery store when you're walking by somebody. That's an excuse me. That brings your power back to you. When you say I'm sorry, right, without intention, you're giving your power away. So when you have done something, when you're making amends, you're not necessarily, unless you've intentionally hurt them, right? Like Gail was saying, it's like, I did the best that I could. But when we're talking to our kids or we're talking to somebody we hurt, then it's like, I am so sorry for my behavior and actions growing up. I had to do this with my girls. I am sorry for not being there as a parent, and I was specific at what I was apologizing for. I'm not just apologizing for being me. I'm apologizing for these actions. And then I can ask for their forgiveness, or I can say, how can I make that up to you? And a lot of times people are just like, oh, well, just love me, or, oh, okay. Right? But I'm not just apologizing for being me. I'm taking up space and I'm saying, I apologize for this, 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 this. How can I make it up to you? Or if I didn't do anything worth apologizing for, it's like, you have shared with me that I've hurt your feelings. And so how can I make that up to you? See, I'm not apologizing.
Right.
I've hurt your feelings. Do you want to talk about it? I'm open to listening. How can I make this up to you? Let's have a conversation and see, what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Not apologizing.
Mm,
And I think we really need to take a look at our apologies.
yes. Thank
Because
you.
so many times, we're giving away our power and our energy when we don't need to be.
And that's the magic there, giving away our power. Thank you for that. That's
You're welcome.
beautiful. It's really beautiful. So we're going to be wrapping up here, but I want to make sure that we share with our listeners and those who are on the call with us today how they can get in touch with you. And I did put it in the chat box for those who are listening. I'll put it in the description box for those who are listening afterwards. But tell us more about how people can work with you, keep in touch with you, take advantage of your podcast.
Yes. So my website is a great place to go. And that's Brenda Reiss, REISS coaching.com. It has my podcast on it, and my podcast is also on Spotify, Apple, all the places. And that's called Forgive Yourself. And you put in my name, Brenda Reiss. And then the other piece of this is that if you go to my website, you can also do a complimentary consultation if anything about forgiveness interests you. And we just have a conversation to see if the forgiveness work is right for you for what's going on. And you can book a 30-minute free consultation for that. And there's also this offer that Cyndi's showing you on the screen, where if sometimes people have a question and they don't want to, ask it. Like I do these Q&As and I do these things for the public. And so you can actually get a personalized video response. It's just a $33 investment, and you can submit a question to me, and then I will give you a response back. And so that way you can do through this scan code, or you can see the link at the bottom, which is bit.ly/ask Brenda Reiss. And so this is a really good way to get something personal. Like if something's really bothering you, get a question answered. And it's my pleasure to be able to help as many people as I can with forgiveness.
Thank you, Brenda. I also want to let's see, can you see the website? The
Yeah.
website that Brenda gave earlier, brendareisscoaching.com. In addition to booking a discovery call with her, as she mentioned, I highly recommend her podcast. So if you enjoyed our conversation today, Brenda has 40 or more. Is that correct, Brenda? Podcasts. I listened to 39 just the other day, and I was sharing with Brenda before the call that it's about navigating family estrangement, tools for finding healing and acceptance. And I just found it just really informative. And, you got to experience today, Brenda, and her wisdom. So do take advantage. Is there a sign-up sheet for the podcast? Is there a mailing list for that?
No, you can just click on it and listen.
Okay.
And then if you want the resources, then it asks for your email, because there's a resource page available that has some downloads and some worksheets and stuff.
Yes.
But just to listen, you don't have to give an email out.
Okay, awesome. So, check out our website, go check out the podcast, book a discovery call, and then, of course, Brenda's recent offering, submitting a personalized video response. What a beautiful gift that is. So thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you for everyone who's joined us. I just want to kick it back to you real quickly for any last minute words of wisdom you want to leave with our listeners.
I think that it's important to applaud yourself for even being willing to look at forgiveness, because knowing when people that look at forgiveness are those people that are really willing to do the personal development work. And I think that you need to applaud yourself, because so many people are afraid to go there. And I talk with a lot of people, and they're afraid to follow through with the work. So, forgiveness isn't just about saying I'm sorry. It's creating an environment of acceptance and allowance, so then we can live the life that we are here to live. That's how I would like us to remember forgiveness.
Well, thank you, Brenda. Thank you, everyone who joined us here today. Hope that this has been a blessing to you. And then just in closing, remember to make every connection an exceptional connection. Thank you so much for joining us.